Rick Rawlings here. We're back for more getting started with Wings over Flanders Fields. In the last video, we talked about setting up a pilot, and we talked about settings that you would put in your workshops. Today, we're actually going to take our first flight, see what that's all about. Quick reminder that the way Wings over Flanders Fields works, you need to have a pilot set up for each air service that you want to fly around in. So if you remember from the previous video, we set up a pilot for the Royal Flying Corps, so we have access to those planes. If you want to use the other air services, you'll have to enlist a new pilot for each service. Come back here. Before you go into your quick combat or your quick scenarios or your campaign, you will need to choose the correct pilot from the pilot dossier, so make sure that you have the pilot you want selected. Before we actually go take a look, we're going to do a quick combat, which in addition to having combat flights, also just have free flights that you can fly around. We'll be doing that today. We're going to take a look at the workshop for one more setting that I want to mention to you. It's going to be under your mapping keys and controllers. This is not something that I would mess around with to start with, but it's something to keep in mind is available if you need it. So if you go into your joystick and then you look at your pitch and bank controls, you will have the option to click on this advanced button here. You can change the scale and the null zone for each axis. So your elevators up and down and your ailerons for turning, you can change both the scale and the null zone for those. So keep in mind with actual planes that have mechanical linkages where you're actually physically moving the rudders and ailerons and elevators around, you're controlling a joystick that's maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet long, so it's got quite a bit of throw in it. You make quite a bit of motion before your plane really moves at all. Modern joysticks, however, only have about 1 inch or so of throw. So the movements that you make with your joystick are going to be amplified compared to what they would be in a real plane. So if you're flying around and you find yourself sort of pitching all over the sky and you're having a hard time keeping steady, remember that these adjustments are available here where you can come in and you can bump up the null zone, which is basically like a dead zone before your plane starts to move, and the scale, which I believe kind of dampens the overall amount of movement that your controller is doing. So you can try those. Don't forget to save and see if that improves the situation a little bit. You can tweak it to your adjustments. So keep in mind that's under the mapping keys and controllers. You have to actually click on select your joystick, and then you will have these advanced. You click on either the bank or pitch, and the rudder I believe does not have it. Nope. Bank and pitch, and then click on advanced. That will allow you to do that. Let's go take a look at our flight. So the pilot's already selected. The pilot you use last will be selected when you start the game. We're going to go into quick combat. Usually it will also default to the plane that you were last flying. So since we have a DH5 is our campaign plane, you're going to have that access to that as your initial plane, but you can change it to whatever you want. So we are going to be doing a free flight. You've got various scenarios that you can set up here. So you can attack balloons, you can go for ground forces, you can start off in a friendly position, favorable position for a turkey shoot. We're just going to do a free flight. The season we'll do spring. Let's do spring. No snow. Change the time of day. Do weather override. I like broken large fluffy clouds. Be fine for this. We're going to have no wingman. You can do random. That's good to know, right? Oh, sorry. Meant none. Where's that at the bottom? Right there, none. Okay. You can set up the skill for if you're doing enemies. You can do the same thing. You can do rookie, veteran, ace, or random. So you can set that up in your fights. You can have top cover flight, which we're not going to do since we're just doing a free flight. And you can also sort of adjust which which version of the planes you're likely to see in your top flight based on the year. Okay. So for a plane, we will just pick. Let's do the old RE8, right? It's a famous plane, and we're going to start it. Let's see what we have at the field. We're going to be right on the deck, and we can start at this field. That's fine. There is an option right here to pick a different field, but we'll just go with this one. It's fine. Once you've got this mission all set up, if you really like it and you want to save it, you can save it as a scenario so that you'll have access to it later. But for now, we're just going to go to the field. So you'll click on, Also, for the purpose of these practice missions, you might want to click on Pilot Never Dies. Otherwise, if you get killed and you have pilot dies in the workshops, you'll have to type yourself up a new pilot every time you come through and fly. So I like to keep this on Pilot Never Dies just in case any weird things happen. So let's go ahead and go to the field. All right, so here we are on the field in our RE8. Never really been in one of these before. The hardware is pretty nice, actually. Look at all that stuff. Got our guy behind us here, observer. You can, I believe that you can actually start the plane manually, but since not a lot of systems are modeled, usually most of us will just press E to start the engine. Go through the paces. Give everything a minute to warm up. You'll notice well, you won't notice maybe, but those of us who have been playing for a while will notice in the Beyond Heaven and Hell 2 update, they've added in some animations to make everything kind of shake and shudder a little bit and give it a little bit more to look at. It's been a very nice addition. So once your engine is up and running, if you are the first person on the flight line, you don't have to wait for anybody else. Basically, these planes, they're going to be pretty underpowered. You can easily go out and buy a motorcycle today that's going to be faster than any World War I plane. So energy management is going to be key, maintaining your speed. They're also pretty fragile, so being careful on the stick is going to be pretty important as well. So in order to take off with these, basically all you have to do is throttle up, keep your nose steady, and they kind of lift off on their own. There's not much of a ground game in this engine. I wish there was a little bit more to it. There are some planes that you can, I know for at least some planes that you are able to ground loop them, which is kind of where you spin around horizontally on the ground. But generally it's pretty tricky to do, so if you just kind of keep everything nice and steady and give yourself some even throttle, you should take off without too much trouble. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throttle up. See the lever go down there. Plane's going to get rolling. You might use just a little bit of rudder here and there to keep her straight. Once your speed picks up a little bit, you're going to want to nose down. Pick up some more speed. And then just gently ease back on the stick, and you're up. Pretty much that easy in almost every plane. A lot more large fluffy clouds than I thought there would be. Not exactly scattered, but okay. So we're going to climb. Generally, you don't want to climb too steeply. You want to watch your airspeed there. So, not sure what the stall speed on this, but keeping it up above 70 is probably good in your climb out. And then we're going to initiate a turn. Just some aileron. And then add some rudder in to go back along the field while still gaining altitude. So you can see this is our altimeter here. Don't let your nose get up too much or you'll stall out, which can be very dangerous along the ground. That's my gun sight there. So that's the basics of taking off. Now, let's try to figure out some stuff that we can do while we're up here. One of the things you're going to want to do is adjust your mixture. If we talked about, we talked about not using auto mixture. If you have a decent joystick, you can try to do that yourself. So the other, let's see if I can get a good view. This other bar right here, that's the mixture lever. If you're not sure what mixture is, that's basically your fuel to air ratio. So what's going into your engine is some fuel and then some air so that it can combust. As you gain altitude, the amount of air drops, your air pressure drops, there's less and less air. So to keep the fuel to air ratio the same, you have to lean your mixture. So generally when you take off, you're going to be at 100% mixture, and then we're going to lean it for this altitude. So to do that, I'm going to use my lean button and unfortunately I don't know how to make it repeatable. There might be a way to do that. I'll have to look. So if you just, I think there is actually in the workshop. So if you just click, you want to go until your RPMs, right there, until that starts to drop. Yep, heard it drop. And then you go back a couple clicks, and your mixture will be all set. Now, it does matter in Wings Over Flanders Field for the mixture. I don't think it's as significant as it could be, because generally speaking I can leave it for thousands of feet of elevation change and I don't really have to touch it. But it is something to keep track of, and like I said, if you do have a nice joystick, some buttons on it, it's pretty easy, and it helps you understand how the planes work a little bit. So let's see, we've kind of gone past the field here. Let's swing back around. Again, aileron turn, use the rudder. Back around and ease out. And then what I'm going to do is use the Autopilot feature. So that is Control-Shift Autopilot. We'll engage the Autopilot. Let that take over for a minute while we look at some other stuff. For the views, F1 is your main forward view. If you hit F1 again, that takes you to the chase view, which is pannable. So look, there's our beautiful little plane right here. The default for zooming in and zooming out are the brackets. Just up and right, up and left from the enter key, and then numeric keypad will kind of zoom you around there. Okay. So you can take a look at your plane. It's great for screenshots. Zoom back in here. F1 again puts you in the player target view, spot view, and then you're back. Okay. F2 gives you a float view, so you're just kind of behind the plane, and you're not sort of locked into it. You kind of float behind it a little bit as if you were a plane following it. That is not really slewable. You get some weird results if you do that. F3 is your flyby. So if you want to get a nice flyby for your videos, click on F3, and you'll do a nice little flyby. F4 is your cockpit without, you're in the cockpit, but the plane disappears, as apparently does your observer. So if you need to look around without the plane in the way, F4 will quickly do that for you. F5 gives you some duplicate instruments on the bottom. So for planes that don't have certain instruments, this can be useful. It's also good to, if you feel like your Lewis gun, if you feel like the Lewis gun should have half a drum left, you felt like you fired about half a drum, and you figure if you look up at it, you should be able to see how many rounds you got left. You can look here and it'll tell you. And it also tells you your health. So if you get shot, it's pretty reasonable that you would be able to determine if that's a life-threatening injury or if you just got nicked a little bit. So you can look down for that. And then F5 again cancels it. Let's see, the other ones you're going to need are F11. Sorry, F11 is your bomb sight. This is useful for bombing and also for when you do photography missions. So F11 will take you to that. And then to get back, you're going to push F6. We'll take you back to the cockpit. That's kind of our views there. Other things that we should talk about. Oh, the map. So M for map will bring the map up. There are 4 levels of zoom. Control-Shift-M cycles through the different map levels. Your icons can be turned on and off. So back in the settings, we had the ability to turn the icons on and off, and that would make this disappear. Now, personally, I like to use the icons on the map because I feel like my virtual pilot would know the territory better than I do and should be able to figure out what's going on. There are some user-made maps out there. Louver, one of the forum members, made some beautiful maps that you can use that will allow you to navigate if you don't want to have these icons on here. So it's up to you. You can't actually turn that off, I don't think, in the sim. You have to turn it off in the workshops. Okay. So this shows your map. Let's see what else we've got. So the comma key triggers between your labels as activity or dots. Activity will show the name of the plane and the the side, floating around in space. There's no other planes up here right now. And dots will just render them as little dots. And then the period will turn that on and off. Okay. So I like to have the dots on. Shift D controls your display messages on the top there. So that will tell you like if there's something wrong with your plane or if you're wounded. It gives you those over Gs is an important one. So it gives you those little messages on the top. I like to have them on, but if you want to turn them off, you certainly can. I think those are some of the key or main key combos you'll need in flight. I'm going to take it off autopilot with Control Shift A, and we're going to fly back to the aerodrome and land, or at least a nearby aerodrome. So head back generally the same direction we left. Use the map to make sure I'm headed on. Yep, right on the right heading. Now you'll notice as you fly around that these planes are usually either tail heavy or nose heavy. There's rarely planes that are perfectly trimmed out. Most of them don't have any trim controls, although I did see a wheel down here which looks like that might be some sort of elevator trim. Not 100% sure, I don't really fly this plane very often. But in this case, as I let go, this plane is sort of tail heavy, so you have to ride the stick forward to keep it level. Other planes will be nose heavy, and sometimes it varies depending on how fast you're going or what altitude you're at. The way the plane behaves can shift. So with this one, I'm going to have to keep the nose pushed forward. Take a look and see if we can see our field up here. I think that might be it right up there. Sometimes the buildings don't render until you're... Oh, there's a... Well, we'll go to this field over here. This might be it. I might be off track a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, well, that's a field. I think it's that one. So let's talk a little bit about landing. To land, you're gonna have to go slower than you think. These planes never fly as fast as you want them to, and they never slow down as quickly as you want them to. So I'm gonna start bringing my throttle down now. And the other thing is to keep in mind on them is the stall speed is pretty low. So you can bring it in quite low safely. You're going to want to watch for trees around the aerodrome, especially some of them have a tendency to, because of the LODs, they'll sort of get bigger as you get close as the full tree renders. And I've actually been killed more than once by those. So make sure you stay clear of any trees. We're going to land to the west. The game does feature smoke, which will show you the wind direction, and some aerodromes even have windsocks. I don't know, we're getting closer, we may see that one pop up. But all of the AI planes are going to land to the west. So even if you are not landing into the wind, it's usually safest to land to the west because you don't want to run into the AI that are going to be taxiing in behind you. If you're all by yourself and you want to actually land into the wind like you should, you're a free course to do that. So we're going to come in, get low and slow. I don't think I've ever landed this plane, so this will be interesting. Again, not a super complex ground game with these. So the landing is fairly docile even in complicated, like more twitchy fighters. Gotta watch out for fences. So check out, see what the field looks pretty clear. I cut through this little path, try to avoid this strand of trees. Give myself a little more juice. Planes have a lot of boat-like characteristics, so when you turn the throttle up, it usually takes a little bit before that really kicks in, so don't overdo it. As you come down, you want to flare above the runway a little bit and just let the plane sort of settle. you'll hear the wheels hit. And then give yourself some backwards pressure on the stick, will help slow you down. There you can see the smoke, so you see we're actually landing with the wind. Although the windsock, well, it's like a crosswind with the windsock. Once you're here, you can throttle up a little bit and work your way over to the hangars if you like. Just watch out for other craft that may be landing. And we'll park right here. So just bring your throttle back to 0. There's a couple of things you can do. You can do E to just turn the engine off, or if you bring the mixture down, you will basically starve it of fuel, and that will cause the engine to shut down as well. Just like that. And that is basically your first flight. We do okay, buddy? You all right back there? Everything okay? You don't talk much, do you? So that's pretty much how that goes. Now to get out of the flying part of this, you don't actually hit escape. You're going to want to hit Control and Q. And that's going to give you the option to exit. So you hit enter, and that will exit and take you back into the shell. Because we have the log settings turned off in the workshop for quick flights, this will not show up on our pilot's dossier. It won't be registered the amount of time flying or any kills or bomb hits that you do, anything like that. For details, you can see how you did. We were just doing a quick flight around, so nothing really much to report. And you can always, after each flight, you can review the mission, but as soon as you do the next flight, it will overwrite that. So you just kind of see what you did. It'll show you where you are. You can zoom in a little bit, and then forward through that. And there's our flight. We came back and landed. Menu. All right, now we're going to try a combat flight. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the quick combat here in just a second. So we'll do that. We're going to set up a combat flight. We're going to make it head-to-head. You can set it. You can change it to have the advantage towards one or the other. I'm going to do spring again. I'm not a big fan of fighting in the winter at this point, or at least not for this demo. We'll do a few fluffy clouds, make it so it's not completely empty, and we'll pick a scout. Again, we are on the British side. We're in the British Air Service, so we have to pick a scout that they would be flying. They did actually have a couple of squadrons equipped with SPADs, so you do have access to that. I'm going to take a Newport. So let's do a Newport 23, let's say. Okay. And we're going to start at an altitude that would be appropriate for, let's say this is Newport 23s. We're talking like 1917 early in the spring. So we're going to pick an altitude that would be appropriate for that, maybe like 12,000 feet. Put ourselves head to head with Germany. Now this is interesting. If you want to like do a plane against plane type thing, you can actually set the side over here. So if I wanted to do a Newport 23 against Newport 23, I could do Britain and pick them as the set of Newport 23 as the enemy. But for now, I will just leave it as head to head against Germany. Going to have them be in an Albatross DV. It's appropriate for this time of year. They'll also, looks like I've got them also setting at 12,000 feet here, so we're going head to head at the same level. Gonna back them up just a hair so we have some time, 3 miles, to kind of get in there and get situated. No wingman, we're just doing a one-on-one on either side for the sake of argument. We are going to be fighting on our side of the lines. So he's going to be at the disadvantage from that point of view. And I think that's pretty much all I got to do. Oh, you can do, if you want to pick a skin, this is where you can do it. So a different paint job for your plane. You'll have access to all the ace ones, and then if you kind of scroll all the way to the bottom, you will also have the various default squadron skins. So we'll go with the 40 squadron, McManus old outfit there. And we'll take a look and see if we can't get this going here. So I'm going to go to the field. All right, we're going to pause here and take a moment to look at the situation. So here we are, 12,000 feet. We are coming towards an albatross, headed right towards us. Supposed to be 3 miles away, although that looks maybe a little bit closer. We are in a Newport. Which is a French fighter, single Lewis gun on the top mount there. And we've got a rotary engine. You can see the entire engine rotates around. The central crankshaft, the propeller is bolted towards it and to it, and so you have this giant gyroscopic mass spinning around like crazy. It tends to make these planes a little bit more maneuverable, specifically in the direction of rotation. So a lot of them will turn to the right better than they'll turn to the left. And because of the sort of stumpiness of the engine, it also gives it a lot of the short mass right near the wings. So it creates this strong center pivot point right there, and will allow us to be pretty maneuverable. Generally, they're not going to generate as much horsepower as an inline engine, so we're also going to be probably slower than that albatross. He's going to be able to stay above us usually in the turns. I'm going to struggle to maintain altitude in my turns, but I should be able to outturn him. So we're going to try to use that to our advantage. There's going to be a blip switch, so we're going to be blipping the engine on and off in our turns to try to maintain our speed, avoid going too fast, because you can definitely rip the wings off in these guys. So as we come into this, we're going to be doing a head-on pass. I'm going to try to swing out to his right, my left, try to avoid that initial encounter. That's a good way to get hit early on before you've even had a chance to really evaluate your opponent. We don't know what his skill level is. When you do come in, you'll usually find that your throttle and mixture are appropriately set, but keep in mind that since you're just coming in the middle of a flight in quick combat, your physical throttle is probably all the way down. So as soon as I unpause, I'm going to bring that throttle up to try to link those two together, and then we'll be on our way. The general theory for this is we want to turn with him, because we can usually turn faster than him. Since he's in our territory, he's going to eventually get tired and try to make a break for it. He'll probably do some split S's to get away from us and then try to head for the east. We're going to have to be careful going down because of the fragility of the plane. Definitely be ripping our wings off if we chase after him too much. So we're going to use things like flak to try to keep an eye on him. The turns are going to be basically a combination of aileron, rudder, and elevator. And you just kind of have to play around the different planes. Some planes will like you to rudder into a turn first, and then throw your ailerons in and then pull back on the elevator. Others will want to do an aileron turn to get you kind of banked over first, and then bring the rudder and elevators in to stabilize the turn. It just depends on the type of plane. So it just requires some playing around. All right, I'm going to unpause and we're going to get started here. I'm going to bring that throttle up, and then I'm going to swing out on this guy a bit. See what he does. Oh, he's going to cut right across the front of me. Look at that, we can kind of come around on him here. So he's going to use his power and go high. Try to do a gentle climb with him. Oh, there he goes. Flipping the turn. So you see, even in my turns, I get a stall warning, because we're kind of not very powerful. If we're not careful, we'll also get G warnings, so we do have to be careful about that. Quick little shot at him there. So yeah, maintaining contact, visual contact on the enemies is often very challenging in these planes. There's a lot of hardware and architecture in your field of view. As you can see, I'm struggling to see him with my wings in the way here. Now we do have to, when we get into these dives, we have to be very careful about building up too much speed. Already see, if you pay attention to the top, you'll see I'm getting the over G message here occasionally. You got to be careful about that. Staying on top of him, even with his powerful engine, if I can stay above him, that's going to minimize the time that his two guns are on me. Wait for a good opportunity here. Watch my over G. Headed. So he's probably starting to think about leaving here. See if we can get a couple more rounds into him. Hits. Okay, that drum is empty, so I need to get clear. See where he's going. He's going north. I'm going to bring my gun down. Control G, and then Shift Control G reloads it. And then Shift G puts it back into firing position. Those are the defaults. And he's back over here. So we need to get back in the fight. So you'll notice there's a lot of sort of yo-yo, like really close, pulling far away with these planes. They're not super fast, but the closure rate, you know, is a couple hundred miles when you put them going towards each other. And so you'll get really close really fast, and then as he tries to pull away, because our relative speeds aren't that great, he doesn't get away that fast. What's he doing now? He's trying to play possum probably. I have to be careful in my speed. Whoa, look at that. He's trailing something. Right there. He might be ready to make a run for it here. Getting pretty low. It's gonna be tricky to keep track of him right there. Where'd he go? He's right there. Yeah, I think he's making a run for it. See him right there? I almost lost him because he blended into the ground. Now we need to convince him not to run away because he can probably, maybe not with this damage, but probably outrun him. So we're going to give him some incentive to stick around. Okay, artillery, you can probably... I probably got it from here, you guys. Thanks for your help. He's down there. So right now his plane's leaking something. He's in our territory. We're above him. No hurry. Right? If we can just ride it out a bit here, see what he does. He might just crash on his own with no further danger to us. Which is what it looks like he's probably going to do. There he is right there. He's going to hit the trees. And he's down. So that's kind of how the fights go. There's a lot of jockeying for position, being patient, especially since we're in friendly territory, there's no other bad guys around. Obviously, if we were in hostile territory, we want to keep a much greater lookout for enemy planes. Let's go land here. Just like in the other part of the video, we're going to focus on landing to the west so we don't run into anybody. We'll see what his... Doesn't look like there's much wind. Slow down. Clear these trees. Oh. That wasn't my best landing, but I'll take it. I actually blipped my engine off there. Alright, let's get out of here. So Control and Q. Since we didn't have this logged, it's not going to show up in the workshop settings, so it won't keep track, or not in our log settings, our pilot settings. It won't keep track of the amount of time that we spent on that flight, who we shot down, any damage that we took. That won't be added into this pilot's official record. If we take a look at the details, you can see we got one plane. Now this is if you have my claims are set to easy. If you had claims set to normal, this would not show. I think it would say like NA, or it would be blanked out or something. 188 shots, 42 hits. Remember that immediately after the mission, you can review it. So we'll take a look at this. We already start in the air. So if we zoom in, it's going to show us our path. You can see where we're hitting. 321 feet. Hit him. And then he eventually crashes. This actually doesn't show every hit that I did, so usually they do. I'm not sure if that's something different in quick combat. But he shot down there. And then I'll continue and land. So you can kind of see your flight path. And if you zoom in even more, I think that's about the max zoom, but you can kind of see where the fight took place, and then we came around, followed him as he was trying to escape. There's the front. Whoops, that's too much. So you can see he was trying to make it to his lines when we attacked him as he was running away, and shot him down there. We'll go back. So that's kind of how quick combat goes. Like I said, you can change all of these settings, just like we talked about at the beginning. And go ahead and run through a few of these, do some, like we did earlier, free flight, just to get used to the airplanes, and then give yourself some head-to-heads. You can try, if you want to start off with an advantage, till you get used to it, you can do that. And then you can work up to having wingmen. The enemy can have wingmen. You could put yourself against multiple targets. It's all good practice. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about how to work on the campaign. So that will be next. I hope you enjoyed this. And thank you for your time.